Hello there everybody, and welcome to 10 tips and tricks for melee builds in Path of Achra. So in this video it's all about the guys that go in and stand right in front of the enemy and win while doing so. So I love melee builds and I want to share what I have learned. So first off, let's talk about the attack modes to choose. Melee builds, they all have the same thing. They have close range, but there's three different distinct ways to build a build upon. There's the on-hit component, which is pretty easy, understandable. We whack things by walking onto them. There is the stand still component, where you just stand right next to your enemy and attack them while giving yourself poise stacks. And there's the on-step method, where you keep moving and while moving, killing enemies. Usually this involves high speed and dodge builds, but more about that in a minute. The gist of it here is that whatever you do, don't spread your attack pattern too much into different directions, because I personally have made the experience that you get the best results if you have one mode of attack and then you tweak all the other components around that. So either you whack your enemies or you build around standing right next to them while being tanky as hell, or being super speedy while killing them before they can even act on you. These are the three general directions that you can take, with some crazy fringe case builds in between always. Now, let's talk about defense modes. Obviously, we need to stay alive somehow. And as all things in Path of Achra, you need to choose what kind of defense method you want to take. Since we are running melee builds, we can run block, dodge, and armor, but we should always go for either dodge and block or armor and block. Don't try to go for all three at once, it doesn't really work. The really interesting part is that due to melee builds often focusing strength, you end up having really decent block and armor ratios. So this is one inherent thing that strength builds have going on for themselves. Strength gives extra armor, makes your gear that you're wearing scale harder, and that is a really big benefit. So, defense-wise, it is quite simple. If you want to go dodge, you need to make sure that your encumbrance is only as high as your strength. So if you want to dodge in heavy armor, you will need to invest into strength before you can do so. Every point of encumbrance that is exceeding your strength is incurring a heavy penalty on dodging, and if you want to rely on it, you better change something about that. As a rule of thumb, if you're playing on basic difficulty, a dodge rating of 200 to 300 is enough to dodge pretty much everything in the game with a 90% success rating. Armor and block, well, they deduct from the enemy's hit. That means they always will protect you in one way or another. The interesting part here is that these defense modes can also be weaponized while picking things that utilize shrug off. That is what happens if your armor is soaking the damage entirely. Block, this is when the shield block occurs, or dodge. Well, I don't think I need to explain that. There's a lot of effects that trigger on one of these three things happening. And this can be stupidly strong and can be even turning your defenses into offenses. So, good example for that is repulsion out of the psychic element tree, where whenever you get hit, you apply to yourself repulsion, and repulsion inflicts psychic damage back to the person attacking you. So that, combined with high block rating, armor rating, dodge rating, can annihilate the enemy by just attacking you. And you don't need to do anything. It's pretty fun. Alright, so there's a couple of effects that synergize really darned well with melee builds. I want to show you which these are. I'm going to abandon this run. I just wanted to show the melee and other stats properly. So let's head into the armory and look at a few items here. So extremely good things for melee builds. Poise, obviously. Armor, block, accuracy. Nothing wrong about any of these stats. Therefore, items which give you that stat are really, really interesting. The other stacks that I personally found extremely useful here, Repulsion, needs to be mentioned yet again for tanky builds, as you see there. Here you have a variant that even gives you armor per stack of Repulsion, so things get really, really spicy here. Inflame also works charm for any melee build, as any stack of it increases your hit and accuracy, and the higher your inflame stacks, the harder you hit. It is an amazing little thing. So that's another thing that you should or could pick up if you'd wanted to. Meditate also works out if you get it rolling, although Meditate is most of the time more of a ranged kind of thing, but I've seen it interact with melee pretty decently as well. And last but not least, Doom. Doom is also really good, as it inflicts a ever-increasing amount of death damage on the enemy whenever they get attacked. This is amazing, as many melee builds manage to inflict like 10 or 20 attacks easily on one target. And if you have a lot of Doom stacks on the enemy, this can quickly outdamage your weapon itself. Really good stuff, helps you to whittle down the bigger enemies. And apart from that, well, fringe cases always apply, where you can build a build that suddenly starts using entanglement, or oh yeah, charge is another stat that also works pretty decently out of the lightning school, which gives extra damage while we're at it. But what I want to say is stay creative. Keep yourself open for things. Now, number 4, what kills melee builds? So we need to look on the other side of the medal as well, what's dangerous for you. So specifically, Repulsion, absolutely devastating for any dodge-oriented fast attack build that likes to stack a high number of attacks. That just rips you to pieces. If you ever are running a dodge build and you run into a level where there's a lot of repulsive enemies, think twice. I often just died in the first turn because I nuked myself. And that was just the first turn while these things were starting to rack up repulsion. So that's one thing, really, really nasty. Doom works equally bad against you as well, because obviously this effect does also increase the amount of damage you take. But where is it? Here, Corrosion. Corrosion is, in my personal opinion, one of the most devastating effects, right next to Freeze. Going to go over Freeze after that. Corrosion destroys block and armor, and it even inflicts extra fire damage on you for just being attacked. So no matter what you do, you will suffer through that fire damage. So Corrosion can be countered by either being very fire resistant, that helps a ton, or having stat cleansers. So there are a couple of effects, items, powers that can cleanse fire corrosion off of you, but this is really, really a big problem for any melee build. And the other thing, well, that is Freeze. Let's see, show me some item with Freeze, please. Well, I thought I'd find one directly, but well, Freeze does deduct dodge. Let's bring it down to that. Why on earth do I not see that here? So Freeze has the problem that it destroys dodge, so you will have to suffer through this problem whenever you are playing a dodge-based build. So let me go here. Freeze per stack. Minus 10 dodge, minus 1 speed, and dealing damage on you when you're standing still, or you get the blunt damage when you're being attacked. Here we have the same problem at hand. If you're a dodge-based build, it destroys your ability of dodging, it inflicts damage while you're trying to dodge, and you cannot even stand still because you suffer ice damage from that. So Corrosion, Ice, and Doom are for me the four, and we need to add Repulsion. Corrosion, Doom, Freeze, and Repulsion are, to me personally, the worst things that can happen. So let's go number 5, attributes. So attributes for melee builds are pretty cool. Many melee builds love strength, almost all of them. It's basically just the question, what kind of defense strategy you follow. If you want to go for armor and block, you can pump up your strength to insane values. You will add in only a little bit of willpower to boost up your healing. Willpower will be nigh useless for the sake of damage increasing, because inflexibility does increase really a lot when you're using heavy armor, but it doesn't matter that much because this does even increase your block. So all in all, heavy armor tanks with a strength willpower build, they don't think inflexibility is a bad thing. It's actually good for them. That's it, how it works. On the other end of the spectrum, we got the dodge tank, which utilizes dexterity and willpower. You use dexterity to increase your dodge and block, and you use willpower to increase your healing and your damage dealt. This is a build path where I strongly recommend to, for one, increase your strength high enough to be able to wear your gear for the sake of encumbrance. It also gives you some extra HP. And if you decide to go for a build that has super low encumbrance and might end up with, I don't know, less than 10 points of strength, you should absolutely pick some vigor, because your HP pool is very important. A low HP pool for a melee build can be extremely detrimental. Therefore, really, if you have a build that runs dexterity, willpower, and you don't need too much strength, mind your life pool. Very important. So, number 6, ranged threats. So, you will always face the problems that there are ranged attackers. And if you are not running insanely high defensive values already, especially the first couple of rooms, there's this wonderful method of just standing around the corner and letting your enemies get close to you. There are always little choke points where you can utilize this strategy, and if the enemy has a lot of nasty ranged attacks, it is really, really important that you don't waste your life by standing on a wrong end and letting yourself get pelted by those nasty ranged attacks. Instead, just stand around these corners and let them come to you. That is a much more effective way. Generally, I have had so many rooms and levels where going around a corner like that and breaking line of sight to my attackers was making all of the difference between victory and death. Eventually, when your build is fully flashed out, you will not need these tricks that much anymore, unless you're playing on higher cycles of Doom. Then, well, it might be actually totally necessary, because you randomly meet an enemy that can just annihilate you if you have ranged on him. Whatever. Ranged enemies are your personal kryptonite, so to speak, and try to lure them in a way that they have to stand right in front of your face. If that doesn't help, bridge the gap to them as quick as possible so they stop utilizing their strongest mode of attack against you and start going into melee with you where you are strong as well. That all doesn't work, well, sorry that you died. We all do from time to time. Now, number 7, I want to talk specifically about the martial skill tree here. The martial skill tree is amazing, and I utilize one of these skills or two in almost all of my melee builds. That is because heavyweight is just amazing for each armor build. Guard is amazing for each build. Seriously, no matter if you're a dodge or an armor tank, you can block so much with that, and as you see there, you can even inflict enemy attacks on the enemy while blocking. So that is really, really good. There is agility, which allows you to inflict attacks while dodging. Here again, really, really stupidly good stuff. And there is here stand ground for your standstill poise tanks, and technique, which allows you to attack the enemy, grow stronger, and reduce inflexibility. That is really rare. Skills that reduce inflexibility are really not many all over the game. You notice that this thing costs 6 points. That is not only because the on-step attack is really strong, it is mostly due to the inflexibility decrease, because that means you can wear much heavier stuff than you usually can. Here we have a two-handed skill ability. Here we have one skill that specifically powers you up the more naked you are. This is a very weird build that is strongly utilizing self-heal, You need strong self-heal, huge HP pools, but it can be amazing as you strike back whenever you get attacked. And the amount of extra attacks is on skill level, so you can do some weird stuff with that. I had really good times with that one. And last but not least, there even exists a skill for bare fist fighting. If you haven't noticed it already, that means whatever your strategy might be, as a melee character, there's at least one martial skill that synergizes darned well with your plan. So most of my melee builds end up being two elements that I fuse together according to my game plan, and then one or two martial skills pumping up that field where I fight. Usually one attack mode and one defense mode. Sometimes only the defense modes if my damage is already high enough. It really depends on the situation. Either way, this tree is amazing for every melee build because it has a tool for every occasion and it powers up your game plan tremendously. So moving over to number 8, we talk weapons now. So weapons are darned important, and you will look for the weapons that fit your game plan. What you're looking for are weapons that synergize with your current elements that you're playing and your current hit modes. The interesting things that I need to mention here in this game are, first off, most weapons have an AoE attack if they are two-handed. Also, they happen to have a higher impact on your strength. The other thing is the game does not differentiate between a weapon and a shield. In game terms, a shield is just a weapon like any other with a high block rating and a low damage. Most shields deal blunt damage, some of them as you see can also deal slashing damage, and I've had a build where I was dual wielding shields already and it was fine. Because shields are weapons too for this game. All in all, you want to use weapons that either deal damage by fitting into your elemental niche well, or my personal favorite are also utility weapons like here, for example, the Talwa, which removes freeze from your character. Entangle, oh boy, I forgot about Entangle when I was talking about things that kill you. I'm so sorry. Entangle kills speed people because it deals damage to you per step you take. Talwa is amazing for most melee builds as it cures you from a lot of different things. Either way, the weapon that you choose is insofar important as I strongly recommend sacrificing stuff on that thing as soon as you've found a weapon that you are happy with. There's a ton of different weapons in the game, and mind you that you can always use two weapons, and unless there is a good reason to dual wield a weapon to deal more damage, I feel like you're almost always better off with wielding two different items, usually weapon and weapon, weapon and shield, whatever, shield and scepter. There's so many different things. What I want to mention here, last but not least, is to pay good attention to specific scalings on your weapons. Here, for example, the scimitar's damage scales off of your speed. Not many weapons do that. Most weapons only scale off of strength. So some of these weapons have, for example, here, a scaling with dexterity, and there's a lot of extra little things where you can sneak in a different type of damage dealing depending what the scaling on the weapon is. So here, for example, the Warhammer scales off of encumbrance, so there's a lot of different things. If you find a weapon that fits totally into your build, by being exactly the mode of damage or the mode of attack or scaling off of your stuff, pump it up. It's almost always worth it to pick the weapon at that point. Now, I want to talk religion real quick. Religions offer not only a variety of prayers, they all offer passive attacks. So some of these passive attacks are so good that you can totally build your entire character around just the passives and without the actives. Humbaba here is a really good example. He's fighter god because you heal by attacking, and this is darned good. It is low key, but it is for beginners, for example, really, really good. And he offers also some nice healing options here, or by increasing blood rage even further. Gods are interesting as soon as they interact either with on-hit effects, defensive effects, or here as you see speed, and whatever god you pick, you should always check out that it doesn't completely interfere with your current mode of play. So let's see what a good example for that is. Well, I don't find one good example right off the bat that is really, really bad for melee characters, because there aren't too many. But all in all, religions are a spot where you can experiment a lot and try mix and match a lot of different things, because it is just something where you can augment your build with, basically. Number 10, class and race, though, are a little bit of a different side. Classes that offer any of the stacks that I have mentioned are really good for you. Namely here, Poise on the Warrior, or Anoint is also very good, offering hidden dodge. We have so many different effects on some character classes, and since we now know what kind of things we are interested in, we can now pretty much make a decision how good we think this fits. So for example, the Nartaka is a absolute fit for every on-step build. The Warrior is an absolute good fit for any armor type of tank build, while the Mubarizun, of course, he's really good for on step attacks and so on and so forth. So in a nutshell, you want to pick a class that fits to your mode of attack and your playstyle. And usually, and that's why I put these points on number 1 and such, I decide on that last. So if you want to go for a melee build, it's up to you how you want to design it. You can also just choose the class first and build the rest around it. But the race here serves a similar point. As you see there, they have all other different passive effects, and will try to build around your skills. So Achra, for example, here is a horrible choice for a dodge and block tank, but an excellent choice if you just want to go heavy strength. And oddly enough, if you go without inflexibility, you end up being capable of wearing super heavy armor and being fast and being, well, berserking, obviously. Either way, there's plenty of options in the class and race segment, and this is where you can individualize your build a little bit. It depends on your playstyle and taste how you want to do things, if you want to start out with this composition first, but I've made the experience that selecting first, for example, what kind of prestige class I want to build, and then selecting the paths that I built together, and then selecting the rest afterwards, resulted in much more stable builds than the other way around. Now, I hope that helps you out in making good melee builds, because they're fun. Seriously, a lot of fun. Don't forget to bring some self-healing effects, of course, but I think that goes without saying. And leave me your comments down below. Leave us some thumbs up. Thumbs up says the German part of my brain to you. Feel free to subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Check out the description box, and see you all next time.